Dr. Yechiel Leiter served in government as an advisor to Ariel Sharon, as Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Education, Chief of Staff to Benjamin Netanyahu in the Ministry of Finance. Major economic reversal there to the tremendous benefit and growth of Israel. He's chairman of the Israel Ports Authority and other positions, but the most important was the father of Moshe, a major in the Israeli Defense Force, Airforce Special Ops, father of 6, killed on November 10 while leading a commando unit of reservists against Hamas terror installations in Gaza. I'm very sorry, sir, for your family, for the loss of your son. I've seen a picture of him, just a terrific young man, his background, his history. And I wanted you to come on the program and tell millions and millions of Americans what this is like, what's happening, what's happened to your family, and what about the future, sir?
Well, thank you, Mark. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address your audience. My son Moshe was my oldest of 8 children. He was also my best friend. He spent 15 years in the Ashdod unit, which is the Israel equivalent of the Delta Force. He actually trained for some time with the Delta Force. At the age of 33, he decided to go to medical school because he was intent on helping people and healing people. He was about to start his clinical experience on October 8th. But on October 7th, we know what happened. Hamas stormed into our communities, slaughtered 1,200 people, and he immediately went back into a reservist position. He had spent, even during the training, the medical training, he had spent 80, 90 days a year doing reserve duty because he was a real expert, field fox. He understood the battlefield very well. And that's why when he went back into his reserve unit on October 8th and organized his soldiers, prepared them for war, he was actually put at the command of the Point Squadron, which led the division, the first division to enter Beit Hanun. That's the northern community in Gaza from which the Hamas terrorists would fire missiles into our cities, sometimes thousands of missiles at a time. And he was killed when he led the operation to discover piers, tunnel piers, that would lead to terrorist headquarters and to their ammunition sites. It was booby-trapped, a very heavy booby-trap. And he was killed along with 3 of his soldiers, and 3 were injured seriously. They lost their legs. So it was a great loss for me personally. I think for the IDF, we had thousands of people during our Shiva, the mourning period, for him, thousands, and many of Prime Minister visited us, the President of Israel, I'd say about half the cabinet, because he was very, very well known. He was very well liked, and he was a major who had mastered a masterful reputation. So half my heart bleeds for my son and my best friend, and half my heart is very proud that I had a son who led the battle, a civilizational battle against evil.
And sitting here listening, it's very emotional. Obviously, I don't know you. I didn't know him. And I'm thinking of the great men who have to go off to war, whether they really want to or not, but in times like this, they're called to do duty, and they go and they do so without objection. And then I'm thinking about the leading politicians in my country here and how they never talk about the IDF soldiers. They never talk about who they are. They don't show their photographs. They don't talk about their backgrounds, their families, what they've gone through. And I assume you find that incredibly disturbing, that never does Anthony Blinken or Biden, none of them ever talk about the casualties, 2,005 now have been injured, of the of the IDF soldiers. These are mostly not permanent military personnel. They're people who leave their jobs, as your son did, even though I think most of them have a military background, and then he's killed. The media here is quite awful. They don't cover these stories properly. I don't know. What do you make of this? You were born in America, correct? Do I understand that right?
Oh, I was born and bred in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come from President Biden's hometown. Mm-hmm. And in my eulogy for my son, I actually sent a letter to the president. I addressed the president and requested that he cease and desist from pressuring Israel to stop the military campaign. Look, Mark, I think you touch on a very, very an important point, a raw nerve that troubles most Israelis. All we hear is about the Gazans, and they're Gazans suffering, but they're suffering not because of Israel. They're suffering because they've been under the boot of a totalitarian fascist dictatorship called Hamas-ISIS. People who disagree with Hamas are thrown off rooftops. This is ISIS, and the United States didn't negotiate with ISIS. They didn't have ceasefires with ISIS. There was a concerted effort to destroy ISIS. The same way you didn't negotiate with Adolf Hitler, you don't negotiate with Nazis. These are people who have no moral compass. The problem with the West right now as a whole, and particularly in the U.S., is the moral confusion that's taken over the college campuses, and it's the college campuses who are producing leaders and think tank people making policy in Washington. When we were kids, Mark, postmodernism was a playful philosophy. Well, it's become diabolical politics because it confuses. It used to confuse good and evil. Now it actually interprets evil as good and good as evil. It's done a complete reversal, in the words of Isaiah. So it's a horrible situation where everybody's concerned about Hamas, and nobody realizes what Israel is facing. So it's important that we try to address this issue of moral clarity as opposed to moral confusion.
Let me ask you something, Doctor. There's a lot of moral equivalency, which is, you were pointing out, in the United States, which is really evidence of a rotting culture. What is it that you want to tell the American people in terms of moving forward here? We have Blinken over in Israel trying to get the Israelis basically to stop by piling on conditions. He's already talking about how he wants to carve up Israel and give Judea and Samaria to the Palestinian Authority and all these other things. You must be thinking, oh my God, what the heck's going on here? What do you want to tell the American people about how things should go forward?
I think there are 2 points, Mark, if you'll permit me. The first thing is that America needs to understand its role. America is, Iran calls America the great Satan. Yeah. Well, that's because it's great. And they want to deride it, so they call it the great Satan. But America is great. And if it departs from that role, it's not only America that suffers at the end of the day, it's the entire world. Certainly the free world, certainly the people who believe in the values of Judeo-Christian ethics. America can't step back from its leadership role. And when it does that, as it began to do during the Obama administration, you're going to have a rise of malevolent powers who are going to ultimately cause suffering for Western civilization as well. It's not going to stop here. Israel is really like my son was the point squadron. Israel is the point squadron for Western civilization. And if we defeat Hamas, then America benefits, and in Europe benefits, and the Judeo-Christian world benefits. But America has to be out in front and has to lead. And it can't step back from that role. That would be my first point. The second point is we have to go back to our roots, to our sources. We've kind of lost a moral compass because we've lost where we've come from. If you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. You've written about this extensively in your book on liberty. You always have to look back and see where do we come from? What are our roots? What do we believe in? And if we confuse that, if we forget that, we make 1619 into 1620 or 1620 into the founding. It gets all confused. If you have a confused beginning, then you have a very confused future. So I think it's really imperative, that America understands its leadership position and understands its roots. And if that happens, Israel will be far more appreciated than it is now. The reason why Israel is derided in so much of academia and the media is because wokeism has taken over and America's role and its history has been forgotten and confused.
Very brilliantly put. How is your family coping with all this? The rest of your family members? I mean, this is a big hole, and yet you're citizens of Israel. This threat still looms over your family like it does the entire citizenry there.
I'll tell you, Mark. It's quite a move, from talking about America's role to my family. But I'll tell you this, we always have to see ourselves personally in the context of a bigger picture, and the bigger picture in the context of our personal lives. When I got the knock on the door at 12:30 at night, the two officers who came to inform me that my son had fallen, I really didn't know what name they were going to say, because I have 5 sons all serving in combat units, and 2 sons-in-law. So it was 7. I really had 7 members of my immediate family, and of course the name fell on my oldest, who was in the most senior position of my family members. But since his death, the Army has requested of my 4 other sons and Moshe's brothers to not go back into combat. They could choose to go back, and their mom asked them to please, at least the present time, not immediately go back into combat. But my 2 sons-in-law don't fall into that category, and they're both very much. I have one son-in-law who's a battalion commander, and the other one who's a squadron commander in the Givati Brigade. We're very, very proud. Our hearts are split. Half of my heart bleeds 24/7 for my son. I miss him desperately. Just to have a conversation with him again, just to stroke him and give him a hug. But I have another half of the heart that's very, very proud, because it is impossible to protect and defend liberty, the values that we hold dear, the value of life as opposed to the glorification of death that Hamas-ISIS does, without being willing to defend and give our lives for that cause. My son, I will tell you this, I didn't know this until the end of the Shiva mourning period, but one of his closest friends told me that before he went in to Beit Hanun, and before he entered Gaza, he left a voice message to 2 of his closest friends. And he said, I may not make it out, and if I don't, these are my instructions in order to take care of my wife and 6 children. So he knew that, there's the possibility of death in war. He knew that he was leading the squadron that would lead the entire division. He was actually a battalion commander in rank, but he chose to go in as a squadron commander because he loved his soldiers so much, and they loved him, and they wanted to be at the point of the entire division, which is over some 2,000 soldiers. So they were very much dependent on Moshe. The entire division was dependent on Moshe's understanding of the battlefield. And he knew that when you go out there in front of the entire division, you stand the greatest risk. But he knew what he was fighting for. Look, he knew what he was fighting for. He knew that we need to defeat this evil. What was perpetrated just this morning, Mark, for crying out loud. I mean, Hamas already took responsibility for it. They get out of a car and start randomly killing people at a bus stop at the major intersection in Jerusalem. This is what these people believe in. It's a glorification of death. It's a death cult. And unfortunately, it can't be negotiated with, and it can't be ceasefired. We'll do everything we can to prevent civilians getting involved in harm's way. By the way, let me make this point. If we weren't concerned about the civilians on the other side in Gaza, it could be that my son would be alive today. We could have just continued strafe bombing Gaza to the Stone Age for the next 3 months. But we chose to send infantry in, combat troops, commando units, in order to do a hair-splitting, pinpricked operation in order to prevent collateral damage. I don't think any army in the world takes the caution and care that we take in order to avoid collateral damage. So I'm very, very proud, and that helps us into a period of consolation as well as mourning.
And, when you hear members of Congress here, the people in the media, phony experts, this administration here in this country, talk about you need to be more precise in how you're using your weapons. Use weapons that are more precise. And, you can't do to South Gaza what you did to North Gaza. I just want the public to understand, and I think you can underscore this point, Doctor. That means that more Israeli soldiers are likely to die because it's more urban warfare, more, alley to alley, door to door. They know the terrain. They know where they've put the explosives and all the rest. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, they've dug an entire city. The billions of dollars that have been pumped into Gaza have not been used for the average citizen. They've been used by the terrorist organization, some 40 to 50,000 strong, to build an entire city underground. I mean, this isn't the 3 tunnels that the North Koreans dug, to attack Seoul, and that were discovered. This is an entire city with operational centers and command centers underground that can be maintained. And by the way, most of their headquarters are placed under hospitals and schools. The firing of missiles takes place from the middle of schoolyards. And we know now that the UN representatives in Gaza were actually holding hostages. I mean, the level of barbarity is hard to understand. One of the hostages released yesterday was severely injured when she was taken hostage, a 27-year-old woman. And so, they operated on her, a veterinarian, an animal doctor operated on her hand. And, who knows what kind of permanent damage. But it's all part of this jeering and jestful, murderous cult. We're going to treat the Jew like an animal. We're going to have the veterinarian operate on her hand. We know the extent of where are the women's organizations, for crying out loud? Where is the Me Too generation? Where is Michelle Obama? Women are being raped right now as we're talking. We know the hostages have detailed accounts of what has taken place there. This is a form of punishment by Hamas-ISIS. You rape women and torture people. There were children who were forced to watch horrific films of the slaughter that they perpetrated. And when they cried, there was a gun held to their head that they have to stop crying. I mean, what kind of barbarism is this for us to be lectured to about collateral damage? I don't want to go into the details. I can go into numbers, about collateral damage of other armies in other fields of battle. And our statistics are far better. And yes, we are, Mark. We are endangering our soldiers in order to prevent, as best we can, collateral damage. But the people responsible for that collateral damage are not our soldiers, is not our army. It's Hamas. And if somebody can come up with a magic potion about how to deal with a terror organization, 50,000 strong, that takes charge in a totalitarian, fascist, terrorist authority over its civilians, and Israel puts its soldiers in front of its civilians. They put the civilians in front of their terrorists. Mm-hmm. Now, somebody come up with a solution for dealing with that where you have no civilian injuries. It just doesn't exist. It's unfortunate. It's tragic. But the sooner we end Hamas, the sooner we destroy Hamas, exactly, the sooner those civilians will be protected.
Dr. Leiter, we mourn for you, for your family, for your son's loss, the losses throughout Israel, the losses, unfortunately, that are going to come. But I do want you to know, because we have to go, that there are tens of millions of us who support you, support what you're doing, despite what the media say. They don't represent us. And support for Israel in this country, not necessarily in a particular party or a particular news outlet, but it remains quite strong. And we will continue to lead that battle right here behind this microphone. And I want to God bless you, sir, very, very much. You take care of yourself.
God bless you, Mark. Thank you very much. It's consoling words that you shared with me, and I thank you.
God bless you, sir.